Welcome to Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a weekly podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Join me, Randy Cantrell, and my co-host Dennis Simpson as we discuss the history, facts, people, places, events, lots more surrounding Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Visit the website at hotspringsvillageinsideout.com. And we welcome you back. Another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out. And we have a returning guest that we're really pleased to have on. Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, as everybody knows, it's Mr. John Paul, a frequent reoffender here. We love having him on the show. It's a delight to have John Paul on. And, you know, we thought maybe just for a moment that we wouldn't have him for a few weeks, but nope. We're going to have him a little while longer, which is just fine by me.
Yeah.
So you think we might be rid of you by, say, I don't know, second quarter of the year, first quarter and a half, something like that?
First quarter, more than likely.
Okay. Well, and we were talking just a little bit before we hit record, but, you know, I get it. I mean, it's a big decision. They want to make sure they got it right. I understand. Let's recap for those of you who don't know. The board did make an offer to one of the candidates. They saw there was 9 legitimate candidates. They made an offer to one of them, and unfortunately, one of the candidates couldn't take it. So Mr. John Paul gets an extended term, a little while longer, right?
A little while longer.
Well, when did you start at the golf? Did you start in the golf department, or when did you? How did it all happen there?
I was with the Hale Irwin Company in St. Louis, and they had merged with a public company, and the management kind of fell apart at that time. And I told my wife, I said, let's move where we want to live, and I'll find something to do. I was, how old was I at the time? I was 47. This is 1990. Well, 97 is when we moved here. And I had it in the back of my mind that the village was going to need to do something about management at the time in the golf courses, because they were getting big and they were fixing to build another couple. And so we moved here in 97, and they hired me as director of golf in right this week of 1997.
Wow. And
so we started then, and Isabella had just broken ground on building that golf course. And so I got to build that golf course with Tom Clark, who was the architect. And that plus running the others was my first venture into Hot Springs Village.
I got to ask, and I don't know, Randy, have you walked Isabella? I mean, it's 27 holes, and
I have not.
Last time I built a golf course was never. So do you just start bulldozing trees and you have kind of a plat map as where it goes, or what do you got? What do you do? How do you do that?
Well, we're a forest. So you couldn't see the terrain or any except through a topo map. So he designed the courses, all of the courses, off a topo map. And you really didn't know what you had until you got out there. And then they center cut the line, and they take all the trees out for maybe a 10-yard wide segment, and then you'd start going out and looking at the terrain. And then they made the width of the fairways, and they cut the trees and started from there. But a lot of the views we have are lucky, because they really didn't know, like number 10 at Granada. When you come up there, they didn't know that view was going to exist, or in the back of the driving range, but it turned out good with the elevations that we've got, and the architect just did a wonderful job, because not only did he build the golf courses, but he's building the lots at the same time. He's actually designing the lots at the same time he's designing the golf courses, because it all fits in together. Cooper wasn't going to do it unless they could sell property, so that was their main focus, was the lots were going to be valuable, and they had to tie those in with the golf course as they built it.
So Cooper didn't plat out the lots?
They platted out the lots, but the architect really designed everything. And if you look, they're all in figure eights.
Right, sure.
And so that's how the lots came to be. And they wanted the best land for the lots and the worst land for the golf course. And they built it like that. So
amazing. And then went on to Granada from that. And anyway, I don't want to, you've got so much to talk about.
The first thing at Isabella was 18 holes.
Right.
It was only 18. And then we built Granada after that. And then we redid 9 holes at DeSoto. And then we did the whole Cortez golf course renovation. And then they built the 9-hole extension to Isabella, and then went back and redid the rest of DeSoto. So I was in on all that while I was here in the 60s.
How long does it take to build a golf course from scratch?
Well, we started Isabella Thanksgiving of 97 and opened it Labor Day of 2000. So
2.5 years.
I had 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I remember when we opened Isabella on Labor Day of 2000, it was 106 degrees.
106. Now,
is
there any particular reason you remember that temperature just off the cuff? Or
because we had to play in it. We had to play in it, and that's always been my limit. I learned that in Dallas. 106 is where I couldn't go any farther.
So you do have a limit, is what I'm hearing, right?
I do have a limit.
Well, I got to ask. I've always wanted to ask somebody this. I'm sorry, Randy.
I don't think I'd leave the house if it was 106.
Have ice wrapped around your neck or something. So when they built Isabella and came back and built the last 9, did they map out Isabella to be a 27 from the beginning, or was that just hey, we got some land left over, let's make another 9?
Well, interesting. That's a whole together different subject here. Isabella was going to be 18 holes, and then Granada was Diamante's second 18. It was not even supposed to be a POA golf course. It was going to be a second private course, part of Diamante. And Diamante Club Corp decided they didn't want to do the second golf course. So they just built Granada as part of the POA golf courses. And after that, they were going to build 2 more. And the board threw a fit. They didn't really even want Granada. They said, we've got enough golf courses. We don't need any more. And Cooper was, selling lots. They wanted to build the golf courses. And so they built Granada, and then they were going to build at least 1 more. And the POA said, please don't build another golf course. We can't afford another golf course. The rounds had been going down because we kind of cannibalized everything with as many golf courses as we had. So they compromised and they said, all right, we'll put a 9-hole extension on Isabella and do 3 lakes. And that's how Maria, Estrella, and Sophia came into being, the 3 lakes out there instead of another golf course. So
it's masterful.
It was not going to be a 27-hole golf course when it first started, but it wound up being it.
Unbelievable.
And interestingly enough, number 9 on Santa Maria is a tough hole, and the bunkers on the fairway really make it a tough hole. And I remember Tom Clark saying that's the last hole he's ever going to build in Hot Springs Village, and it was going to be a tough sucker. I remember him saying it.
But it's still a par 4, is it?
Still a par 4, yeah.
Still a par 4. You still only get 4 shots to put it in the hole. Well, I tell you what, on more current events, John Paul, we've obviously had a rate increase, or we're about to have a rate increase come January 1. Right. And I'm dying to know, what are we going to do with all those fabulous riches we're going to have January's 2, right? No?
Well, it goes up $20 a month on January the 1st, and then $10 each of the next 2 years. Okay. That's in lieu of a cost of living adjustment. They're not going to do a cost of living adjustment on top of that.
So it's not in addition to.
No, it is not.
And that's for lots and homes.
Yeah, they've said
$20
for 3 years. That for 3 years they would not go up on a cost of living in addition to that increase. It is just that increase.
Yeah, and the board votes on that every year, so it's something they just don't bring up and don't vote on. So that makes sense.
But they have told the public and everybody that they're not going to go up the next 3 years other than what was voted on.
Well, and I understand. I mean, from the time that we began talking about this rate increase or the FRAT and reviewing everything, a lot of things changed. I mean, a lot of things changed. And one of the things that went through my mind is that, you know, we interviewed Greg Jones about the difficulty in hiring people and how the wages are rising. Well, that's affecting y'all too, isn't it?
Oh, more than you know. I was talking to the compliance department this week, and they've had 100% turnover in the last month at the gates.
100%.
100%. We're getting new people all the time. It is very, very hard to hire people in the $11 to $15 range, and they're just going around trading jobs out because you've got Oaklawn that's hiring, you've got Amazon that's moved in here, and major hire. And it's hard to compete. It's really hard to compete and keep your prices where they are. And it's tough. It's a tough road right now.
Sure. Paying more wages, paying more for products, and then trying to keep your prices flat, recipe for a headache.
It is. This is a very tough time. And retirees especially, they moved here, they want it like it was, and they don't understand why it can't be the same as it was, and it just isn't. I mean, I know Greg is having real trouble at the golf courses hiring waiters or waitresses. He's having to close one day a week, which he doesn't want to do, but I understand it. And the same way at the gates. Now, we've been able to manage with the gates and keep our security intact and do it, but it is a struggle, and people just need to realize out there how big a struggle it is, and give everybody a break right now.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about this. We alluded to this a little earlier. You know, we talked about roads and paving, and that's where a lot of this was designated to go. But, and I joke, obviously, but the day one, you're not going to have all that money. It's going to take years and years for it to accumulate to do the big paving jobs that you need to do, right?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's not like we get all that money day one. It is going to come in over 3 years. And we can't get to all the projects that we have in the first year anyway. And so the board has said that the assessment increase, the difference for the money, is going to go to infrastructure repair. And there'll be a chart on the website that shows how much money we've taken in, where it's going, and there'll be charts like on roads, overlays and crack sealing and that sort of thing. They'll keep track of what roads need it, when they'll get there, when, a target date that they'll get there. The same way with culverts, how many culverts we need. Now, one of the areas we need to do quite a few culverts. Well, we've got to hire people to do another crew. We've got to have 2 crews working at the same time so we can get it all done. So some of that money is going to go to salaries and wages. But the vast majority of everything we're going to do as far as capital improvements go is going to be old infrastructure repair.
Well, Randy, I want you to pitch in here, because is there any other municipality you know of that does things like this, or that has to do things like this? I mean, are we a one-off bird in your world?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a one-off bird. And John Paul, we've had conversations on this show before, because, in the day job, I largely serve people who are in public administration, so city managers and their staff, people like you that are not elected but are hired by the elected people to take care of the day-to-day stuff. But when you've got taxing authority like a municipality does, and you've got access to state, county, and federal funds, it's a whole different, completely different animal. And I don't suppose that anybody that moves to the village has had that experience before. I don't know where they would. We've grown up and we've lived in municipalities. And so from my vantage point as an outsider who's hankering to be an insider as soon as I can, quite a lot of it seems to me just failing to understand how the whole thing even works. Am I off base?
No, you're right on base, and the whole thing, we're gating a city. There's no other city that's gated in the country, and 15 miles by 9 miles wide, and with 5-6 gates that we've got. It's a chore to do that, and then you throw in streets and culverts and water and police and fire. You've got an entire city with no tax base, and you're just at the mercy of going out and getting an assessment increase when you need it. Cooper will tell you, I think, that the one thing that they know they did wrong in the beginning was to not put a cost of living increase on automatic cost of living increase every year where we didn't have to vote on it. At their other communities, Savannah Lakes, Tellico Village, and on down the road, they did that after they got there, and they were able to keep up. And if you look at their rates now, they're above us in their rates at those villages. We're just now catching up to where we ought to be on a cost of living increase from 1970. So we're going to have some money to get things done that we need to. Like you said, it's not all going to come in at once. But over the next 3 years, we plan on making a big dent in the infrastructure, whether it be roads, culverts, sewer, water, that sort of thing.
Well, there's a lot of, and I've shown Randy when he comes and visits, I'll show him some beautiful places that nobody lives. I mean, nobody lives. And in some of those areas, the culverts have failed. Some of those areas we have warning signs that say, don't drive on this, simply because, Cooper built this 50 years ago and things wear out, right?
Well, and they're wearing out all at once right now, especially at the west end of the village that is the oldest and the 50 years old. And that's where we need to tackle. Now, one thing they're doing, they're bringing in a laser machine that goes around the roads and maps the roads down in the ground and shows us where it's failing, and it grades the roads for us. And that, combined with the work the Public Works Committee has already done, combined will show us a game plan on where we need to go first. And we'll chart those roads. And in the first quarter next year, you'll be able to go on the website and see what roads need to be done in the order and when we'll get to them and how that's going to be done. So the villagers will be able to see when their road out in front of their house is going to get fixed, if it needs to be.
Wow.
And where it lands in the formula.
Well, I've been in and I'm sure you have too, but I've been in Jason's office, and he'll pull up the big GIS map and just show you every culvert from 12 inches around to 6 feet around. Right. And every culvert in the village is graded. It has a grade, it has a number, most times it has a photo. I'm like, that was a lot of work. That was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. And the trick is to get to those before they fail, because it'll cost us 3 times as much to cut the road and put a new one in as it will to go in and concrete the old one as it is there. And that's the goal, is to get to them before they fail so that we can save a lot of money.
To concrete them in, what do you mean?
Well, they'll go in and they grout the pipe from the inside so that they can fix it basically without having to replace it.
Right, without having to dig it up, pull it out, block off the road. We had a major failure down here on De Soto and Barcelona. 2 months? Yeah. And I mean, that was a big, big, big culvert. I'd never seen one that big in my life. And Jason was pleased that they got it done before time. It was ahead of schedule, but still, I mean, that's in the middle of De Soto. That impeded everybody that came in the West Gate.
Yeah, for 2 weeks. And there were 2 of those on De Soto that happened about a month and a half apart. And then they just got through with Levantino. Levantino was closed for about 3 weeks while they replaced 5 culverts up there. And those are the ones we want to get to before they fail rather than after. And hopefully now that we can hire another crew and get to it, we'll get to a lot of them before that happens.
Wonderful, wonderful. Randy, did you have any other things that came up to you? Or
well, I've got some personal questions, not too personal, John Paul, but so 24 years roughly you've been in the village. I don't know, from then to now, observations. I mean, we're talking the internet was in its infancy when you arrived there. To give people some perspective, I mean, the internet was beginning to be somewhat mainstream in 97, but we had those modems and we had the dial-up tone, and it's nothing like it is today. And I realized that there's, anybody that's over 24 years old has no idea, of a 1997 world. The Village in 1997, your perspective coming to the Village from then to now. I don't know. I'm interested.
Well, in 97, you're really only 5 or 6 years past cell phones getting started, because cell phones really started in the early 90s. For any intents and purposes, they were before that, but most people didn't have them. And then when I got here in 97, you're right, the internet was not even a thing. Now we had a lottery system, and we had to change the lottery system on the tee times. But interestingly enough, in 1997, I think all the way through 99, we didn't take credit cards. You didn't take credit cards at any place in the Village for any reason. No golf courses, anything. You either wrote a check or paid cash. And then we had you made the tee times mostly by telephone back then. And then we put in the lottery and got into the internet. Interestingly enough, the IT department back then, there was no broadband of any kind. We had to build towers to shoot beams from one course to another so that we could integrate everything all together to where you could make tee times at one course for another course without calling them. All that came to be while I was here too at that time. And that was a very interesting time.
Well, the dynamics of the community, just to follow the dynamics of the community from 97 to now. What have been some of the changes that you've really seen?
Well, let's go back to 95. In 95, when Diamante was built, the Village stopped at Ponce Road. It did not go past Ponce on DeSoto. And then when Diamante was built, it went a little bit farther. And then they took it all the way to Highway 5, but it took until 2004 to develop the rest of it, out to Granada and Diamante and Isabella's extension in Isabella. And so most of the activity then in golf was at the East End. And you just had DeSoto and Cortez at the other end. And most of the play that we got back then came in, stayed on the East End and played the East End. They didn't go to all the way through, because now you had 6 golf courses at that end of the Village, and that's where most of the play came. That's one of the reasons that we redid Cortez and DeSoto when we needed to do them, because that brought people back that way and brought life back to those courses once again. And now they're on a par with any of them. Cortez, I know we went up on the rates at Cortez to equal Granada and Isabella because of the demand for play at Cortez. It is on an equal basis with those. And so is DeSoto now. DeSoto is a wonderful golf course.
They're absolutely beautiful. They really are. And they're great play as you talk. I was going to just throw one thing in real quick, Randy. And we talked about this one of the times you were here recently, Randy. Right out in front of, between the Balboa hole number 1 and hole number 2, you cross the road and there's a wide spot in the road. And over on the side, there used to be a couple of poles that stood up. You're grinning, JP.
Yeah.
And Randy doesn't, I was trying to explain what Randy, and because, we talk about how the Village is, it's easy to get lost. Well, but in 97 and 95 and even 2000, GPS was not common. Cell phone coverage was iffy with your little flip phone, if you were good enough to have a flip phone. And so the Men's Garden Club, wasn't that who it was, that put up the maps all over the Village in strategic places? If you were on a main road, you could find yourself and there would be a map pinned to this little building they built, little structure. And that's how you found your way around at the time.
But that wasn't the reason for the wide spot in the road. The
No.
wide spot in the road was because those were the mailboxes. The mailboxes were there. They didn't deliver mail to the homes. They had a wide spot on DeSoto, and they had a wide spot there and a couple other places, and that's where you went and got your mail.
So everybody just picked up their mail, once a week, like you do, probably.
Or every day, whenever, but you'd go to your mailbox and pick them up. Now that was before I was here, but those were reasons for the wide spot in the road.
So those were community mailboxes of sorts.
Right.
So really,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that was before me too, apparently. And I'll tell you the story again. In 1996, we rented out the DeSoto Club and had a presentation on web investing that I did with Noel Sinclair, and I was the IT guy, and he was the investor or the broker. And we actually ran one wire through the back wall, back down the far corner to one other plug-in that we prayed would be what we call a POTS line, a plain old telephone system. And we plugged it in. We dialed Aristotle in Little Rock because it was only 50 cents an hour at that time. And because the long distance would eat you up. Remember long distance? Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Anyway, but you're talking about the changes in technology, Randy. I remember when, and you'll recall this too, JP, back around 2000, 2003, I kept thinking, why don't they email people? What's the problem? And it went from a whole group of people that were saying, I don't have email. I don't want that. Can you fax it to me? Literally, can you fax it to me? To within 2 more years, there were people that were really mad because we weren't sending out bulk emails that explained what was going on. So the POAs kind of had to be in this one foot in both worlds. Is that fair enough?
Sure, it is. And when DeSoto started back in the 70s, you went down and put your ball in line in a rack, and when your ball came up, that's when you had your tea time. That's how it started back then.
Very analog.
Yeah, very analog. And from what I understand, you had to be there to put your ball in. You couldn't call your ball in, right?
Now you could get a friend to put it in for you, but you better know when you were going to be there.
Well, and as I understand it, back in the 70s when it started, and it was more of a country club, social club type thing at that time, it was suit and tie, as I understand, right?
Oh, you didn't go in the DeSoto Club without a coat and tie, especially on Friday and Saturday night. And I remember when they started going casual, there was an uproar like crazy. And everything has its cycle, and that was one of them. But casual did not go over well here for a lot of years.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
It was, yeah. That was really, if social media had been alive back then, they'd have been crucified.
They've been tearing them up, huh? Tearing them up. Yeah. Well, I tell you what. Tell me what you see coming up in the next few months, and besides your second retirement, third retirement, possibly.
I've lost count. I'll go back one of these days and reflect. But I guess a couple of the biggest things coming up here is the sanitation change with the new trucks and the new trash cans, new garbage cans, and that's going to happen here pretty quick. I think they'll start rolling those out. We don't have them yet, but they'll come in mid-December, and we'll start delivering them near the end of December, whether it be the large one or the small one. 94 gallons or 64, I think, are the two sizes. And the people have already said which size they want, and they'll deliver them to the house. And then the trash trucks actually are coming a little bit ahead of schedule. We'll have those in December. So, excuse me. So we should roll that out in January. Now, the change will be that there'll be one driver and no riders. So the arm will pick up the trash can and put it in the truck. And the routes are going to change a little bit. The days may even change of whenever you pick up, but they've got a whole new route planned because when they go down, the lifter is on one side of the truck. So they're just going to try to go down one road. And there may be some places that they're going to put them across the street rather than where they put them now. But that'll all come down and it'll be lined out and everybody will know what they're doing before we start. There'll be a little learning curve involved, but hopefully not too much.
Well, if we ever need misinformation, just look on social media and they'll tell you about how we're buying $6 million garbage trucks and why would you spend $6 million on a garbage truck? And I'm like, I don't think you see the full implications here. I mean, this is.
We wanted a couple of Scott Randall. I mean, that's about 3 general managers ago, maybe 4. General managers ago wanted to do this back when he was here to save money, and it will save money. But, I talked about the gate personnel and the restaurant personnel. We really can't find trash truck driver loaders. And this is really going to help us with technology in the future. And the other thing technology is going to help us with is the gates. It's the same way there. We're going to have to go to more streamlined electronics as it's developed, and we go to it. We got a fine line to walk with being secure and backing up people, and so we've got a fine line there to walk and do both of them, and they've done a pretty good job of that so far. And if you look at our crime statistics, they're still extremely low compared to the rest of the world. And we look at that all the time. But technology is going to be our savior in the future, not only there, but in a lot of places.
Yeah, I can see. So there's going to be another gate system in the next year or 2 years?
Well, I think we're going to have to. We're going to have to go to RFID readers and electronic arms and that sort of thing. Now, if it'll come in a year, I would love that. And if I was going to be here, that would be my main focus going into 2023 is to have a RFID reader on your headlight or on the car where you just go in and it'll pop up and down, and do away with people that are going to have to be there, because we're not going to be able to find them if it continues like this. Yeah. So I think technology is our lifeblood in the future for this.
Well, I was joking with Randy. We went to Chuck E. Cheese with my granddaughter last Saturday, I guess, and they had a sign out front that said they were hiring for Chuck E. Cheese. If you like loud noise and screaming, crying babies, this is the place for you. And I remembered telling Randy, I said they would have to pry my hands off the garbage truck before I would come work at the Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, I mean, you look at McDonald's. I mean, their technology is they don't have people inside anymore. You go and you punch what you want and they bring it to you. But everybody's in the same boat, and technology is going to be the savior.
Yeah, well, and people are expensive. I mean, people are expensive, and they, if you rely on, and then they want insurance, and then they got to pay the taxes, and so does that mean that the places like the East Gate would be open 24, but you would just be digitally open?
Well, very positive, just like Balboa is now. What we need to do is strengthen the entry arms to where that we stop all tailgating. And there are laser machines out there that'll drop it right where it's supposed to and do away with that. But that's the future, and that's the way we're going to go.
Wow.
Speaking of gates, I'm curious, the member gates, how were those organized or constructed? What was the rhyme and reason of those? The various entry and exit points, not the main ones, but do you know?
Well, this place was built over 50 years, and so they built it as they went. There was no master plan involved, and the only gates that were manned in the beginning were the main gate at the west end and Balboa. Those were the two, because there wasn't an east gate back then. Those were the two, and then we closed the Balboa gate when the east gate was open about a year. And boy, the roof came down when that happened. You couldn't imagine that was going to happen. We also had two time a week trash pickup, and that went to 1 day a week from 2, and that was the end of the world too. So there have been a lot of changes that have been made over the years, and we'd love to do 2 day a week pickup, but it's just not in the cards monetarily to do that.
Mm. Well, things like water and sewer, are we pretty good there? I mean, I know we've got infrastructure issues under the ground, but as far as the plants, are we in pretty good shape?
Oh yeah. The water treatment plant gets the highest ratings of any in the state almost all the time. People worry about water. Lake Lago is our water supply, and it was designed and engineered for a 60,000 person build, 60,000 build out. And I don't think we'll ever get to that number here. So we've got plenty of water. Lake Lago is 120 feet deep, and they recharge it when they need to during the wintertime, whenever the flow is high. So as far as water goes and our treatment plant, yeah, we have to keep up with improvements as we go along. But no, they're in good shape.
Yeah. I did a village venues. Oh, gee, it's been 2 years ago or 2.5 with Jason. And he was showing me the Lake Lago plant in the tour, and it was beyond impressive. It was beyond impressive. But he made note that, we had a huge storm and a huge flood together. One of them knocked out the pumps. One of them, damaged part of the bridge and whatever for the pickup station. And so for roughly 18 months, we ran off Lake Lago and whatever fell into Lake Lago. And it was only down 30 feet or something. I mean, we've got plenty of water. That's the understatement of the story.
Yeah, and 30 feet really is nothing on that lake because it's 120 feet deep. I mean, we can last a long time in a drought.
Yeah, yeah.
Are there power concerns going into the winter?
Well, no. The power concerns, when I first moved here in 97, we had a lot of outages. There were a lot. I mean, you'd go probably one a week back then, not for long, but they are. Now, most of the infrastructure at the east end's underground, where at the west end it's above ground. So there's a little more power outages on the west end than the east end, but they've done a good job. Energy's done a good job in the last 10 years, especially replacing lines around Cortez area where it really was bad for a while, and they don't have near the problems they used to have. So I talked to people. For a good friend of mine moved here 10 years ago and put in the generator, and I asked him how many times in the 10 years he's used it, and he's used it maybe 5 or 6 times. So our power here is really good. And now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this used to be a hot spot for generator sales.
It was, yeah, for that reason. But now First Electric's putting in fiber optic to every home in Saline County. So people like you that work from home are going to have upload and download speeds available at the same rate. And for telemedicine in the future and that sort of thing, it's going to be big. It's going to be a big thing.
Well, the biggest thing I can see, and I don't have any beef against this, if after you get Suddenlink service and you have it connected and it runs, the infrastructure for Suddenlink is surprisingly good.
Oh, it is.
The customer service is atrocious, but there's nobody else in town in many places. There's a lot of places where that's your only option. Well, for Suddenlink to have a competitor to everybody, that has a home in Saline County. Wow. A real competitor.
And hopefully it'll spread into the west part of the village. And they've shown a willingness to do that. Energy hasn't, but First Electric has shown the ability, once they get this going, they're a co-op, so they have to service their customers first. But after that's done, then they've shown signs that they possibly would look at that.
I would be very interested in it. I saw that article where they said they might extend into other areas, and I thought that was absolutely remarkable. But I worked with Iron Mountain Lodge and Marina in Arkadelphia in Caddo Valley, Caddo Gap. And they were able to get SWEPCO, I think it was, ran fiber through the power lines because, and for those of you that don't know, fiber doesn't interact with electricity at all. It's just pulses of light. So there's no interference or anything. It's literally on the same wire or on the same bundle of wires. And they got they got fiber in at Iron Mountain, and literally it went from, we need you twice a week, Dennis, to, we think we got it from here. So, I mean, I was thrilled because it was such a problematic issue to get internet to them. And then fiber just fixed it all. And those are speeds up to a gig. The prices I saw that to connect to are very reasonable. They're competitive with Suddenlink or even cheaper in some instances. So it's going to be a complete and total game changer. A lot of people, and let me cover this while we're talking on it real quick. A lot of people, the very best they can get if they have AT&T UVerse in the East End is maybe 50 megs. If you're at the corner of Ponce and DeSoto, you might get 100 megs down, and that's it. That's all you're going to get unless Suddenlink comes by your door where you can go up to 1,000, which is a gig. Well, fiber is going to blow all that away. The very entry level fiber is over 100 megs, I believe.
Yeah, and First Electric is a cooperative, so they're a nonprofit, so they're in it to service their customers. Now, it'll be a game changer for the East End, no question about it.
I read an article probably 6 months ago in the Wall Street Journal where they were talking about co-ops that were doing this. And they interviewed one guy and he said, at no time in the future do we envision a period where our customers will not need internet.
Right.
So they looked at it and went, look, you're going to need internet. Let's put it in. Let's play the long game for our own customers. And you're like, Entergy is a profitable entity with shareholders, and that's what they're looking at. Whereas the co-op is owned by its own members. So, yeah.
Right. It's a $22 million project for them in the village. So it's quite an investment.
And what were they saying? 2023 is when they should be built out?
They said 12 to 16 months, but it
really
depends on how many crews that they have in here. And they've started already, and they're on the ground doing it with 2 crews. And at some point, if they can get the people to do it, they'll have as many as 20 crews in here working if they can do it. So they're going to hit some things along the way. So it won't be, you got to break eggs to make an omelet. So it's not going to be totally invisible.
But they're boring under the roads and under other things. They believe they may hit something.
Mostly.
Yeah.
With that and the bypass, those two things in particular, do you see? I mean, I can see such a shift in potentially people coming from Little Rock, people that can work remotely, even younger people coming in the village. I made a remark on one of our shows. One of my favorite places to stay is on a golf course, and there's another suite on the other side of these people's home that is rented out. And over the course of a week, there were two different couples that came and stayed in the other suite. Both couples from Little Rock. I would put both of them guessing in their 30s, and they were here to look at homes. They were in the village to look at homes. And I would suspect, with high-speed internet, what have you, over the course of the 24 years, you're bound to have seen a shift in the demographics and other things.
Just like, and you're going to see a huge shift now, in my opinion. Just like the tunnel opened up Northwest Arkansas, it's not going to be as big as that was, but the bypass is going to open up the village, especially down the west end and the Glazy Po Gate. We think the Glazy Po Gate is going to be a major player in the future. We've got 2 builders that are looking hard at that over there as entry level homes or just above it. That's the first gate you're going to come to from the village. And then with the bypass open, you're 15, 20 minutes to the other side of Hot Springs. And if you worked in Hot Springs, you can live in a gated community. Your kids can be safe, and you can be there in 15, 20 minutes. We had a meeting with LifeNet the other day and talking about the response time and how it's going to take 20 minutes off a trip. And that's huge for that. There are many times that the 2 ambulances gone and we've only got 1 in the village, but they can get back 20 minutes faster, 30 minutes faster, and that's going to be a game changer. But we have people looking at that area over there just for that reason. Now, we've heard that they're way ahead of schedule as far as the bypass goes, and they think that they're going to open in the first quarter next year, at least by May. And we've heard other things that said even quicker than that. So it's imminent. The circle down there at 5 and 7 is almost finished. I look for them to open it before the first of the year too. So it's going to be, I've said this 4 times now, I keep using the same word, but as far as changing the game, it is going to change the game for the village.
Well,
no question.
Diane and I came out Mail Route Road. We were looking at another property of building a gentleman was building. We came out Mail Route Road and got on Highway 5 and drive, down Park Avenue, Highway 5. And we got to the loop, and I looked over, and they had the forms poured up for building that last bridge. And I knew that was going to be one of the last things they did, because, you don't want to fix the bridge and give people access to a road they shouldn't be on yet. Right.
Right.
And from that point, Diane said, hey, let's go to that, what is that saltgrass place over by Best Buy and Sam's? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'm sitting right here at that cul-de-sac, the loop. And I thought, if I turned left, got on this, in 3 to 4 minutes, I'm going to be on the bypass. I would be at the hospital, at the Best Buy, at the whatever, in literally 20 minutes from here. Yeah. But we drove another 35 to come into the rest of Hot Springs.
That's right. No, it's going to make a big difference. And a lot of people they have to see it before they believe it. And seeing is believing. And when it happens, it's going to happen. We've had one builder that has never set foot in the village, has built over 2,000 homes in the area, had never once been in the village, who's coming over here looking at lots to build homes. And that's the kind of thing that's going on. And we're selling lots now. I mean, there's a couple a week that we're selling through the realtor program. It's just amazing to me. There are a lot of people that are looking at Hot Springs Village.
Wow.
I wish we had more homes to sell.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, you said that somebody had discovered Hot Springs Village, and you said, no, they knew where we were. They just decided to come stay.
Yeah, that's true.
Randy, any other questions you have for Mr. John Paul?
Oh, I could keep going, but we've wasted enough of his time. But I appreciate you accepting the invitation to come back and be on the show.
Anytime, guys. Anytime. There's still a lot of history out there. I think you ought to get Linda Mayhood on here at some point and
yes,
get her to talk. She's got more knowledge in her little finger than most of us do. She was here from the beginning.
We're trying to tee up as many people that have those original Cooper ties as we can. We've jokingly told them we need to get this down. We need to chronicle this. We don't
absolutely.
need this information to go away.
And if you could get Ernie Deaton on, that would even be more interesting, because Ernie's the engineer that was with Cooper from the beginning, that is still with him, and he has stories that I'm sure that nobody's heard.
Wow. Well, I asked, who was it that used to work in Public Works at the front desk? I'm going blank. Peggy Ford.
Peggy.
And when I would go in and all the roads were named, Spanish names, and she was Peggy, I would call her La Pegra. And she, I don't know if she cared for that or not, but anyway, she was always a great sport. And I asked her one time, I said, who laid out these roads? And she said, well, there was one guy named Lefty and there was the guy named Curvy, and they lined out all the roads. And I wouldn't surprise me. I'll tell you what, John Paul, we're going to save some history for next time. How about that?
You got it.
Truly, I do want to. Let's put it a couple of months out and give you another call and ask more history questions. I'm Dennis Simpson from Hot Springs Village Inside Out. That is John Paul with the POA, and you are
Randy Cantrell.
He does that so well. Thanks for joining us on Hot Springs Village Inside Out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that by visiting our website, hsvinsideout.com, and tell a friend.